Yo, what up guys? Travic here, and today I want to talk about one of the absolute craziest builds I've had the opportunity to play in early access. Now this build is very different than what I would ever be expecting to play in Path of Exile, and I have played a lot of crazy builds over the leagues, even in early access for Path of Exile 2. I've played some crazy stuff with Temporalis and blinking around the map and lightning bolts blowing up everything, but this build absolutely takes the cake. I never thought in a million years that I'd be playing Path of Exile as an FPS shooter. I am talking about I am running and gunning through these maps. I am shooting all kinds of things from all kinds of weird ranges. And while yes, Path of Exile has bows, I have never expected to literally be firing a crossbow like a machine gun because I just didn't think it would happen. Now, like myself and many others, I was told that crossbows were bad, that they were not very good, that they were clunky, they were weird, they didn't work as intended. And boy, was I proven wrong. Absolutely, positively wrong. I have been time and time again blown away by what people in the community are able to figure out while playing this game. Very recently, I was streaming and I was always, I'm always on the lookout for very new, exciting things to play. And a gentleman in Twitch chat, his name was Rogue, and he was like, hey man, did you know you could play crossbows? And I was like, I'm not playing crossbows. Crossbows, no shot. And he was like, I'm telling you, crossbows are really good. And he links me this video, and I watched this video about crossbows, and I was like, there's no shot that's how that actually works. This has to be edited. And I started doing some more research and digging into crossbows, and came across some other really cool tech and things to do, and crossbows look actually really cool and a lot of fun. So me and a couple of my friends, my buddy Mendo, my friend Anti-Swipe, we got together, we took the video that we saw, and we started putting our own little spin on it. And I'll share you the video with you guys in a few minutes. But as you can see, this build excels at mapping. It maps so well and is absolutely so fun at mapping. Now, the next closest thing that I can get to playing and mapping like this was indeed the monk or the stat stacker on a gemling or a monk. And while that's really cool, it is not the I'm gonna mow down my enemies from a million miles away cool. And you see, we are cruising, we are moving, and we are absolutely just having the time of our lives. Now, disclaimer, this build is very, very, very good at mapping. Very good at mapping. I have seen some tech to make it work for bosses. I actually ran out of currency before I could swap into doing some of the weird tech for bossing. I do plan on taking this build a little bit further after I farm up some more currency and seeing how I can push it into bosses. Tier 4 bosses, it's a little sketchy on. I wouldn't really take this into bossing. This character I would 100% solely just map with in like true Path of Exile fashion. If I'm going to boss, I'm just gonna play cast on dodge because that's just infinitely better at bossing than everything else. And for mapping, I'm just gonna map with this because this is really good at mapping and a whole lot of fun at mapping. So, I don't wanna lead you guys down any weird routes to say this can do all content, but this can indeed do maps very, very, very well. It can kill map bosses extremely well, and you will have no problems at all just being able to dive right into content. Now, I mean, you can see I'm just blowing up these maps, no problem at all, just kind of cruising and going. But how does the build work and what makes it tick, and where did this idea come from? So let's get into that. Now, originally, like I said, Rogue came to the stream and he was telling me all about it, and he showcased this video to me by a guy named StruthGaming, and Struth did the exact same thing. He was cruising, he was going, he was clearing content, and he was absolutely cooking with his take on the build. And I actually have it here. It's going to be included down below in the description for you. And he worked on this back in January, so, roughly a good month ago, and he made fantastic progress on it. Unfortunately, the way he played it was a little not my cup of tea. He played it with 3 dragons. He really didn't finish building it out in the thing, but he did a fantastic, absolutely awesome shell, enough to get started, and he gives fantastic information about it. So we took his idea and we started messing around with it, and we included our own little spin on it that made it absolutely great. Now, like I said, he did a fantastic, absolute job. His video on the build is great. It explains it in awesome detail. I'm going to include it down below for you guys. But our take is going to be slightly different. We move away from the 3 dragons, we still get those beautiful explosions, and we expand upon the tree just a little bit more than what he was doing, including a little bit of different things. But let's start from the beginning and work our way up. We are working with a skill today called Rapidshot. Rapidshot, as you see right here, just fires a bunch of bullets, and all it does is it fires at 25 rounds per second. And as I start shooting and doing what I am doing, and I start mapping, my attack speed will go higher and higher and higher. And you notice while I'm firing right now, my gun, my crossbow is going up in damage the more that I continue to fire and the more that I completely unload my clip. And you can see the reload speed too is not a problem. I'm able to, just as long as I have mana, hold down the button and keep firing. Now, this skill works in a very interesting way. As you fire this skill, it builds up something called heat. Heat gives you extra fire damage per heat. Our skill right now is level 25, so we get a maximum of 7% as extra fire damage times 29, giving us a whole lot of extra heat. We even get extra heat from the quality. Now, the reason why that's so impactful is you see, as I start shooting at the top of my screen, my heat starts building and my damage will start to go up and go up and go up. And you can see the same effect here as I'm shooting. My fire damage is just starting to rise and rise and rise and rise. Outside of that, we are going to be pairing this with martial tempo. We want to be able to fire as fast as possible. This cap, or this build, will indeed hit the attack speed cap. Do not go over 30 attacks per second. The minute you hit 30 attacks per second, the character becomes stuttery and unplayable. So we do indeed, in maps with everything going on, do hit that like 29.9, 29.8, beautiful number to not go over the 30 attacks per second, so our character does not break. We have fresh clip. This is what's giving us extra damage. We have in our clip, or in our magazine, right now we have 100 rounds. So that means we will get 1% more damage for each bolt reloaded by that skill in the past 6 seconds. So when we fire our, we fire, we reload, we get a whole lot of damage. We fire, and then we reload again, and then we get a whole lot more damage, and then we fire and fire again, and then we reload again, and then we get more damage, and then we fire again, and then we emergency reload and get more damage and maintain even more damage. This is the most like busted support gem I've ever played with. This is like absolutely completely crazy. We're then using primal armaments for more weapon damage, mobility, so we can actually move and keep on shooting. You can see right away our ability to move and fire is really good. And once we start getting everything going in maps, we just do not have any of that slowdown that you would normally get while playing other classes and other skills. And we use fork so that we can pierce the mob and then fork and hit everything on the screen. That's what gives us those beautiful ability to clear the screens, hitting all the mobs, giving us the explosions. You're then going to be pairing it with emergency reload. Emergency reload, as you saw down here, is a skill that allows us to reload our clip in an emergency type of situation without having to worry. You can see my bullets are going down, and then I emergency reload it, and I could just skip the entire animation phase. And then this is how we maintain that beautiful amount of damage. We'll fire, we'll reload, we'll start firing again, and then if emergency reloads up, right before we're about to reload, we would press the button, and that would give us that nice little burst in DPS. We're going to be pairing emergency reload with ingenuity to reduce its cooldown. It's got a very long cooldown, so we'd like to take it low as possible. And we have premeditation because it's an empowering skill, and premeditation gives us 15% more damage. So this paired with fresh clip is a metric ton of damage. It is an absolute mind-blowing amount of damage. Now, while we're bossing or while we're fighting very tanky rares, sometimes we need a little bit of extra oomph to really get in our way or to help us clear that. And that's where the Ripwire Ballista comes into play. Our Ripwire Ballista is going to give us Font of Rage. Every point of rage gives us more increased damage, so we get a bunch more extra damage. As the ballista sits on the ground, you can see it actually, ticks up relatively fast. Ancestral Urgency, so that we can place our ballista down really fast without having any issues. We give our ballistas a little bit of extra elemental resistance so they don't just immediately die when we need them. And we have Font of Mana attached to it too, so we can get some nice mana regeneration back. The other really cool thing about this ballista is it does do a little bit of damage, and it does pin and maim the enemy for us, which is also really nice. And you can really lock down map bosses inside of a map very well. We're going to be pairing all of this with Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder. Herald of Ice, we're going to be doing the lightning tech, where we have lightning infusion, conduction, innervate, and magnified effect. And Herald of Thunder, we're going to be doing the opposite with Glacian, cold infusion, ice bite, and electrocute. Essentially, we want one herald to do cold and one herald to do lightning, and then we opposite them so they, bounce off of each other, and that's what gives us that beautiful screen-wide effect. Next, we're going to be using Charge Infusion paired with Combat Frenzy. Combat Frenzy, since we freeze Electrocute or Pin, which we're doing all that, we are able to generate a Frenzy Charge. Unlike the Monk, we will actually be generating Frenzy Charges and not converting them to Power Charges. And we're going to be using Charge Infusion here to give us more skill speed. We will have this up the entire time. As long as we're hitting enemies, we always have Charge Infusion. Charge Infusion is going to be giving us a ton more skill speed, and that's what's going to be helping push us to that 29% breakpoint so that we can just keep firing and move at the speed of light. And then lastly, we're pairing everything with Wind Dancer to give us precision, clarity, and cannibalism. I'm actually contemplating like moving these around and putting on maim and pin and all that other stuff on here. But there's a lot of room that you can mess around with Wind Dancer, and you can put a lot of extra things on because Wind Dancer has Gale Force, and every time you get hit, Gale Force will proc and hit mobs. So you can do some really fun stuff with Wind Dancer. Now, we're using Wind Dancer because we are indeed going to be evasion based. Our evasion with acrobatics on right now is at a whopping 72%. We can push it a little bit higher with investment, but like I had mentioned, I actually ran out of divines. I need to go farm. I'm down to 4 lost divines, and I really want to be able to get a lot nicer gear on this character to make it even tankier and go a little bit further. We have 75 all res, 1500 life, and we have a dream that we just dodge, and 28% of the time, well, we're either getting hit and praying we don't die, or 28% of the time we're thumbs up because we got hit and didn't die. That's just the reality of what we're playing. Now, our gear is pretty straightforward. Our gear is we are going to be indeed using a Bombard Crossbow. We are using this base because it has the best reload time. If I were to change bases and use different bases, you're going to have and play with different reload times, and you're not going to get that really smooth reload time. So you see here, we fire and we're firing and we're going nuts, and then in 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 of a second, he's back at it, just completely firing and going crazy. If we increase the reload time to 0.8 of a second and we start firing, you're going to notice right away a drastic difference in reload time. And you can see the reload there was indeed a little bit longer, slightly longer. Not as bad because it's only 0.5 of a difference, but indeed it is pretty noticeable. But now if we swap to a reload speed of 1.1, oh, I gotta load my ammo. As we swap to a reload speed of 1.1, you're gonna notice right away a really long reload time. Granted, it's still not terrible, but it's long enough to make you go, all right, that's pretty long. So I do indeed recommend looking for a crossbow on a Bombard Crossbow. Now, the stats indeed that are good on the crossbow, me and Mendo are currently experimenting with 2 different types of crossbows. I am using a crossbow that is triple element with attack speed and levels of projectile skills. Mendo is using double element with wed or elemental attack damage skills on attacks. So essentially what he's using is he's using a crossbow with this line, increase elemental damage with attacks. You can actually see that's what I have socketed in on my crossbow right now. And I believe Anti-Swipe is also using a triple, I want to say, don't quote me, I believe he's using a triple element bow as well. We are indeed using plus levels of skills if possible. The higher the level of the skill that we get, the more heat that we get. And you see right now, if I hold Alt, we have 27 heat because our skill is level 25. If I take off the crossbow, we only have 26 heat. So the extra 5 levels is giving us an extra 3% damage. I can actually divine this to get to 26, and I believe 26 is another level that I would get more heat. I just don't have the divines to be throwing at this right now, but that's really that. I did originally not have attack speed on my crossbow, and then I changed my crossbow and had attack speed, and it broke all the attack speed because I was like 33 attacks per second. So just keep in mind that while attack speed on the base crossbow is really nice, it is not hard at all to hit that 25, 29 attacks per second, especially using jewels in the trees. So just something to keep in mind. There's a lot of attack speed everywhere, and it's really easy. So if you could find a nice crossbow with triple element projectile, double element wed, and projectile, should be more than good enough. We are using a breach ring. We have flat damage. I'd like to have an element damage, but I do have physical damage, strength, and int, and all resistance. We have another breach ring with triple flat damage, intelligence, and resistances. Flat damage on this build is absolutely crazy. It is very strong. You want to have as much added damage as you can everywhere. You can see if I take this ring off, we just lose like 16,000 damage. And if I take this ring off, well, I can't wear any of my gear. But you can see it's just so much damage. Now, on top of that, we are using the Hand of Wisdom in action. I know everybody everywhere in the world is going, of course it's another Hoa build, bro. You're right. It is indeed another Hoa build. In the current state of early access, you would be absolutely positively crazy to not use these gloves on any attack-based build forever, period, forever. And even when these gloves get nerfed, I still imagine they are going to be the strongest thing on the face of the earth, and we are still going to use them forever. Now, these gloves are great. We do get stats wherever we can, and it is super helpful. We are using a helmet with as much evasion as possible with triple resistances. Currently, I think this is really good. There is a world where you get like a 500 energy shield helmet, but it's probably insanely expensive. But as much evasion as possible so that we can scale up our acrobatics is really nice. Our body armor, exactly the same thing. We have spirit on our body armor, 1900 evasion, cold and lightning resistance. Currently, I have 194 spirit with 11 left over. But, you know, depending on how you do things, you're going to need a little bit more or a little bit less spirit. Surprise cat. Now, our amulet currently has Spirit, Life, All Res, and Chaos Resistance, and it currently has High Alert anointed on it. High Alert giving us more evasion while we're at full life. I do think the better anoint in the long run is probably going to be Pure Power, but I still need to experiment with that a little bit, and we'll see how that overall goes. But currently, we use High Alert. High Alert is located right here. It gives us more evasion rating when on full life and more stun threshold when on full life. It's also a really cheap anoint. It's Ire, Greed. It's just really something fun to play around with. Our boots, same running theme. A ton of evasion, movement speed, lightning resist, and chaos resistance. 6% rarity on my boots is not making or breaking the bank. You see, I only have like 19% rarity. You don't need the rarity. Don't stress over the rarity. And we are indeed using an Ingenuity. You want to just use Ingenuity. It is the best belt in the entire game. Every single build ever should be using Ingenuity. It is completely cracked out of its mind. And we're using the Melting Maelstrom Mana Flask. Now, you notice that we don't actually use a ton of our mana. The only time we ever use mana is when we reload, and a regular Mana Flask is more than sufficient to solve our needs. I'm actually using the Melting Mana Maelstrom Mana Flask because I'm using Crystal Elixir, which gives us 40% elemental damage during any flask effect. And since the Melting Maelstrom effect never runs off, as long as I'm regaining mana, and you'll see, we'll press the button, we'll start firing, and you'll see my mana when I reload is still going up because the flask never stops running. We always have that extra 40% increased damage. So that's why I'm doing that. Now, moving on over to the Ascendancy tree, we are indeed playing Pathfinder. I know, Pathfinder and not a witch. Or witch hunter guy, mercenary thing. I know, wild. The biggest reason that we're doing this is we get running assault, which gives us less movement speed penalty while using movement skills. Now, you'll notice that if I take off mobility, I am pretty slow, but I'm still faster than I would normally be because I'm indeed a Pathfinder. And if I put mobility back in, that's what gives us that beautiful movement speed that you see here. So that's why we're taking Pathfinder. We're also just unaffected by slows, which is insanely powerful on its own. And then we get 5 extra passive points here, 1 extra passive point here, and then more flash charges gain, which, you know, is nothing to, you know, it's really strong. Overall, it's really strong. The rest of our tree is experimental. This is a version 1. We're coming over here. We're getting projectile speed, attack speed, dexterity, increased damage with elements. We are inflicting shock, ignite, chill, and sometimes electrocute. We have a chance to pierce and projectile damage. We have stats based on what we need based on gear, so change your stats accordingly. We get 15% increased 15% increased damage for each type of ailment. Like I said, we have ignite, shock, freeze, and sometimes electrocute. We have movement speed over here with evasion rating. We come up over here so that we can projectiles can chain off of terrain. Sometimes really nice. I'm actually really heavily considering getting rid of this entire wheel and moving this somewhere else for more or better damage. I'm going to mess around with this later. Currently, as like I said, I don't have divine, so I'm just leaving it alone as it works. Up here for Falcon Technique so that we get more attack speed per dexterity, a bunch of dexterity over here, a bunch of evasion, extra dexterity and evasion, double the evasion of our body armor, acrobatics so that we can evade all hits, and extra damage while affected by the heralds. Moving up this way, because we do so much cold and lightning, I'm currently experimenting with lightning and cold pen. I don't know if this is going to be better than overall fire pen, but we do scale a lot of lightning damage. So there is a world where we want to just penetrate as much lightning resistance as possible, and we don't care as much about cold resistance, where we swap this to this node, but having cold pen is still really nice to help us get those chain explosions. We are using one controlled metamorphosis diamond, and like I said, this is experimental. We are using a large ring. The large ring is to literally allow us to get Wildstorm to get 15% more maximum lightning damage. I'm hoping with the large ring plus Wildstorm plus Anointing Pure Power, we could do some really fun stuff. I am worried that I might actually have to path up all the way over here. I really don't want to path up all the way over there, but it is something I'm going to be experimenting with in the future. Moving over here, we have a bunch of increased attack damage nodes and a little bit of movement speed. These are a really nice wheel, gives you a ton of damage. Skill speed here, more movement speed and skill speed. Just more elemental damage with attacks coming this way. This way gives us access to a nice jewel socket. And then coming down this way, we get more damage over here with hits against enemies that have elemental ailments on them. And we have a bunch of ailments, so we get a bunch of free extra damage. Strength as needed to equip our crossbow. Up over here, we have an Against the Darkness time loss for extra cold and dexterity. I would like extra cold and extra lightning, but that is 100 divines that I don't have. So I had this that was on my old ranger. So I'm currently messing around and experimenting with this. This jewel actually hits a lot of nodes. You notice it hits lightning rod, shrapnel, doomsayer, instant reload, and adrenaline rush. In earlier variants of this build, we did indeed take the skill point there. That gave us access to Adrenaline Rush, but in the current state of things, I did manage to find a really cheap Megalomaniac that gave me Adrenaline Rush and Climate Change. You do not need this. I did just happen to see it on trade. I would say if you're going to get a Megalomaniac, there are an absolute ton of options. You can get Crystal Elixir and Forces of Nature, and that'll let you skip these little nodes there and put them somewhere else. You can get Exploit, you can get Acceleration, you can get anything in the wheel here. You can get just Polymath if you want. There's just so many options for the Megalomaniac. I know my buddy Mendo has where is it? He has Essence of the Mountain, and I think he has one of these nodes over here. I don't remember which one, but I think it's one of these nodes over here. And then I've seen Mendo play with Climate Change and Essence of the Mountain. You can get one for Pure Power if you have that kind of money. You can get one for Wildstorm if you have that kind of money. But there's just so many options that you could play with the Megalomaniac. You do not need the one that I have. Now, Doomsayer gives us a bunch of extra Herald damage, which is really nice, and it's really easy to path to. If you find yourself needing more Spirit, don't path this way for more Reservation of Herald nodes. This over here gives us insane reload speed. I have taken these nodes off, and it is very noticeable when we don't have this reload speed. It is very nice. And Adrenaline Rush is giving us very easy 4% extra cold, 2% dex, and a little bit of movement speed and attack speed if we killed recently. This big triangle over here is giving us a chance to freeze, shock, ignite, and electrocute, and increase ignite, and all that fun jazz. We're getting penetrate elemental resistance, which is beautiful. And we're getting that 40% increased elemental damage with attack skills during any flask effect that I had mentioned earlier. Over here, we get just chance to shock and lightning pen, beautiful nodes, a bunch of lightning damage, a bunch of lightning pen. Over here, we gain lightning rod. Because we are not crit based, this node is absolutely insane and gives you a metric ton of damage. Lucky means that when you attack, since lightning damage has an insanely large roll on it, you'll see we roll right now from 236 to 4,000. When you shoot and hit, Lucky means it'll take a look at the damage that you did. It'll take the number. It'll re-roll the number if it's bad, or re-roll the number if it's good. It doesn't matter. It just re-rolls the number. It looks at the two numbers and it picks the better of the two numbers, and that's the damage that you did. And then we're coming over here for advanced munitions to inflict ailments with projectiles, and shrapnel for a chance to pierce. And pretty much we just want to be able to pierce. Currently, right now, I have a 97% chance to pierce. If I divine some of my jewels, I would get a 100% chance to pierce. We have a 40% chance to chain off terrains. If we pierce or fork, we can't chain, which is why I'm debating removing the nodes up here, because we're mostly piercing and we're mostly forking. So I really don't know how much bouncing off terrains is really doing for us, but I got to figure out where I want to put the nodes. And then the last major thing, we have a bunch of jewels. Our jewels have chance to pierce. That's how we're getting our pierce. We have attack damage with crossbows. We have a jewel here for increased mana recovery on kill. Not really needed, just kind of nice to have. A little bit of freeze buildup, LE damage. We have another jewel here with attack, pierce. That's like the main theme right now. Attack damage, pierce. And then another jewel somewhere. I think it's over here. Attack, pierce, a jewel up here. Pierce, attack. Eventually, this probably moves into a Adorn setup. I'm not even going to lie to you. But we're not there yet. But maybe in the future, we move to an Adorn. Now, this jewel is attack speed, attack damage, evasion. This is another option. These are really good if your crossbow doesn't have attack speed and you want to get more attack speed. You can actually just like cap your pierce really easily with these nodes right here. But there weren't a lot of really good suffixes in Emerald jewels. So like you're really like kind of on the fence about what kind of suffixes you want to use with Emerald jewels. But overall, that is the entire build. The build, like I said, is completely crazy. It does everything that you want it to do. And even going into maps, it's just a whole lot of fun. As far as maps go, you really don't want to use maps that have the ability to negate ailments. Negating ailments is really bad and just really ruins your day. And it's just not something you want to do. Also, maps that have extra elemental resistance can really ruin your day. Now, one last thing that I want to mention, you'll notice in the hideout, I ended up going like this, and that's because I didn't reload my bullets. You press E to reload your bullets, and then your rapid shot has your bullets in it. So let's just go take a look at a quick map and see what happens in real time. Then we start firing, and then we are right there. We have our ice bite, we have everything, and we're just off to the races. And you see our attack speed. Where is it? Our attack speed 2857, and that's without everything else going on. So we get to that nice 29, and then we're just able to just mow down rares and not have any problems at all. Let's hit this lever. I actually recently just put crossbows back on my filter because I didn't realize how insane they were and how limited they were. So putting crossbows back on my filter was really, really, really nice. Come over here, blow all this up. Come over here, blow all this up. And then we are just literally able to do everything that we want to do. This map layout's kind of bad, though. This map layout's kind of bad. I didn't realize the layout. I just thought it had breach and extra level and all that jazz on it. And I was like, this will be sweet. We could just click this. This will be fine. Assuming that we can hit, I don't know. I guess we can't hit those mobs. Welcome to mapping. This is why I do the trials all the time. I get it. That guy was frozen. Those guys are exploding. That's a dead end because I don't know how to read map layouts. There's a chest. Click it. Maybe divine? Divine? No divine. Unfortunate. All right. Come on up over here. That's a dead end again. I really want to get to this map boss because I just kind of want to show you guys what it looks like to map boss. Now, somebody's be like, oh my God, DPS where? And some people are like, that looks pretty good for a crossbow. And I'm like, yeah, for version 1 of a character, it looks pretty good. Come down over here, shoot all that. You saw we were chaining off the wall there, which kind of makes me want to keep chain. Our character's forking all around. We just blew all that up. We bounced off the wall. And then we just start mowing down our enemies. Just keep moving, man. All right, let's see. I know there's a breach, and this build is actually like insane at breaches, but this is like the worst map ever for breaches. But we can still take a look at what the breach does. Then you see we just blew up that whole thing. And like I said, you know, it's never going to be stat stacking monk, right? Or stack stacking invoker, or it's never going to be temporalis. But for something a little bit different and something a little bit like kind of wild, it's a lot of fun. You see mobs are just dying because bullets are just chaining off terrain. All right, maybe we keep the terrain bouncing. Maybe we just keep the terrain bouncing. And then you see even in here in breach, you know, we start firing and we are just able to go. Actually gonna grab that breach ring. It's like the worst layout ever. Thank God we didn't get 10. I'd be so sad if we got the 10 breaches on this one. Oh my God, I'd be so sad. Please don't kill me. See, we can take a hit. You can take an okay hit. You know, I mean, I wouldn't stand in 40 explosions, but we can take a relatively good hit. I will also maybe not get hit by like a map boss, you know, by like one of their like slam effects, but overall pretty good. I guess we missed a rare mob over there. Great. Fantastic. Now, going into bosses or going to map bosses, the way you're going to want to do this is you're going to want to start firing so that you can have all your heat up for when the boss comes out, and that'll give you a ton of damage. And then once the boss is out and you're able to kill him, as soon as you can instant reload at the end of your clip, you emergency reload, you keep down your ripwire ballista to give you extra rage and all that fun jazz. And you're just kind of like cruising. So we're going to stand over here. We're going to start building up our heat. We're getting some rage. We're gaining our mana back. We're just waiting for this guy to come down. And then we're not going to get hit by that. He's going to run away. And then we're going to watch our reload. We're going to insta reload. And there's the whole boss. So, I mean, it's pretty good. It's not terrible. It like does its job. And like, there's so much more room for improvement. And I like actually messed up the emergency reload. I like immediately reloaded like way too soon, and I wasn't supposed to do that. But I mean, like, that's fine, you know? And that's it. That's the whole map. And that's how the character plays. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you got a kick out of this. If you give this a try and you think it's awesome, let me know. If you give it a try and you find some new innovative way to make it stronger or have idea for the bosses, I'd love to hear your ideas and thoughts. But for now, friends, I'm going to leave this video to you guys, and I'll see you all in the next one.